We are here today at the International Criminal Court. We are going to interview Fatou Bensouda, the Chief Prosecutor, on the case, the El Mahdi case, on the destruction of cultural heritage in Mali. This was the first case purely on the destruction of cultural heritage as a war crime. Chief Prosecutor Fatou Bensouda, you have been serving the ICC, International Criminal Court, since 2004. And in the last 5 years, you've held the position as the first woman, also as the first African, the position of Chief Prosecutor. Before that, you were the Minister of Justice in your own country, the Gambia. Could you please tell us a little bit more about yourself? And also, if you could tell us a little bit about your own heritage.
Personally, I think culture is very, very important. Cultural heritage I see really as an identity of a people. I see as a history of a people. I see as a memory of a people. And I see it as something that should be passed on to generations coming. In fact, future generations look to history and culture to really identify themselves, to know what are the reasons that perhaps even certain actions were taken by their predecessors. So it's very, very important, whether it is looking back or going forward. It's very, I see it as something that is really critical to a person's identity. I'm a Gambian, I'm an African, and I do inherit a culture not only from my country, but also from my continent. Africa is a very diverse continent. We have, you'll find that as you go through Africa, there are several cultures that may sometimes be varied, but you also see the interconnection, you know, in the various cultures across Africa. And depending on what the occasions are, for instance, whether it's a sad occasion of, let's say, a death, or maybe a joyous occasion of weddings and other ceremonies that we have on the continent, you find that, for instance, music plays a very big role in African culture. And this is something that you cannot just even give it to one culture alone. I think it crosses the continent, that we express our various feelings, our state of mind, we express it through music. We also do that in other ways, for instance, in the beliefs that we have, the history that we have, maybe the way that we dress for different occasions. All of these are part of the culture, and also our thinking and our ideologies are all part of the culture that we inherit, and which I believe there is a duty on each and every one of us to preserve it and to be able to pass it on to the generation that is coming. So it's really a very important aspect. For me, it's critical that we should try to preserve this culture, whether at the national, and here I can also talk about the international level. We have a duty, we have a responsibility to preserve what we have inherited and to also be able to pass it on. Because culture has been so important for all of us. I think this informed the forming of UNESCO, establishing UNESCO in 1954. This was really the world realizing that this is an important aspect of our lives, of our beings, of our identity. And it is important to show that it is not only one community or one country or one region that inherits a culture, whether it is buildings, whether it is sites that we see that has really gained importance over the years. But there was the realization that it is important to preserve this, and that it has become a heritage for humankind, not just for that community, not just for that country, for humankind. And it is important to preserve it and ensure that we pass it to the next generation. In terms of, let's say, international criminal justice, it also occupies a very, very important aspect of how we treat the various atrocity crimes that are being committed. All of that shows that really this is something that we need to continue to make sure that we preserve and to make sure that we pass it in a state that really reflects what our history is, what our identity is, what our culture is.
Why is the destruction of culture a war crime under the Rome Statute?
Under the Rome Statute, this is a war crime. This has been prescribed as a war crime for buildings, for this intentionally directing attacks against buildings that are dedicated to religion, to history, to education, to arts, to the sciences. As long as these buildings are not military objectives, it is a crime under the Rome Statute, under Article 8 of the Rome Statute, to destroy, to commit this kind of crimes. It's punishable under the Rome Statute. So this is, in fact, the Rome Statute is just reflecting already what similar treaties have already said about making this a war crime. And I believe it is important that that step is taken. Under the Rome Statute, the individual criminal responsibility, I think, makes it even more important that we should pay attention to this kind of crimes and to be able to punish them. So we do not have any excuse. It is right there under the Rome Statute, under Article 8, making it a war crime and describing the circumstances why it's a war crime and why it should be prosecuted. So this is an opportunity, I believe, for those who have the responsibility of implementing the Rome Statute to ensure that we are always in a position to send a loud and a clear message that you can no longer go about destroying these kinds of buildings, these kinds of heritage with impunity.
In 2012, the destruction of the cultural heritage of Mali, particularly the Sufi saint shrines and 2 important mosques, occurred. But such destruction takes place around the world. So why Mali and not, for example, Syria?
It is very unfortunate that this is becoming the trend in all these modern conflicts that we see. It's really unfortunate. And where the ICC, where the Office of the Prosecutor is able to send a message in where this occurs, we will do so. But it is a matter of jurisdiction. It is a matter of jurisdiction where, as an Office of the Prosecutor of the ICC, we can intervene and cannot intervene. And I will just briefly describe to you the circumstances in which my office can intervene. I said it's a matter of jurisdiction. We have jurisdiction over when these crimes under the Rome Statute, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide, when they are committed on the territory of a state party, a state that has already ratified the Rome Statute and is part of the ICC. When it occurs on their territory, like Mali did, then we will be able to have jurisdiction to investigate and prosecute those crimes. Secondly, when these crimes are committed by a national of a state party, in that case also, we will be able to look into the actions of the national of that state party, even if it happens on the territory of a non-state party. We will be able to look at the actions of the nationals of a state party. Now, coming in to discuss Syria, for instance, Mali is a state party, and it has ratified the Rome Statute. But also, it has referred the situation to the ICC to investigate and prosecute. As a state party, it can do that. And because of that referral, I also decided to look into the situation in Mali to investigate those particular crimes. Even when Mali was referring the situation, they mentioned the destructions of the of the buildings. These Timbuktu historical buildings that are dedicated to religion and history. They also mentioned it, and I was able to investigate into the situation. I had jurisdiction. I also realized through my analysis and that of my team that these crimes have been committed and that they are rightfully Rome Statute crimes. So I had jurisdiction, subject matter jurisdiction, I had territorial jurisdiction, temporal jurisdiction. I was able to proceed, and also for me, in our assessment, it was in the interest of justice to investigate. Now, coming to Syria, firstly, Syria is not a state party to the Rome Statute. And I just want to underline my regret, as someone who is even personally very concerned about the destruction of this kind of heritage. I'm concerned about that. Syria is not a state party, however, and the destructions of, let's say, Palmyra in Syria is regrettable, really regrettable. So we do not have territorial jurisdiction in Syria because Syria has not signed or ratified the Rome Statute. However, in our effort to see what we can contribute, for instance, to what is going on in Syria, we did look at issues of personal jurisdiction. I mentioned that we potentially could have jurisdiction over the nationals of state parties. And the phenomenon we've seen in Syria is that it is not only Syrians who form the ranks of ISIS, for instance, who form those who are taking part in destroying these historical monuments. There are also nationals of states parties who reportedly are found among the ranks of ISIS. And potentially the ICC could have jurisdiction over those nationals. And this is the way that we have been looking at it. Unfortunately, we also see that those foreign fighters are usually not those bearing the greatest responsibility for the crimes. And this is a policy that we have in the office, to look at those who bear the greatest responsibility for the crimes, because this is how we feel we will be able to tackle all these crimes, get to those whom we know without them the crimes would not be committed. So, but what we find is that those who are the so-called foreign fighters coming from nationals of states parties are not amongst that rank in the hierarchy. And also, with respect to complementarity, ICC intervenes. ICC does not replace national jurisdictions. It complements. And with respect to those nationals, we need to get the information to see whether their own states are investigating and prosecuting these crimes. Because if they do, we will not. It's always primacy for the state to investigate and prosecute by themselves. And what I have done is I've requested for information from the states themselves. What are they doing with respect to their nationals who are alleged to be committing this kind of crimes? Other crimes, yes, but also these kind of crimes, whilst they are amongst the ranks of ISIS. And we are collecting that information, and it is being analyzed in my office to be able to see the possibilities of even finding synergies to be able to contribute to what is ongoing in Syria and the crimes that have been committed there. So this is basically the difference between Mali as a state party and Syria as a non-state party, which primarily ICC does not have jurisdiction, especially territorial jurisdiction. We do not have, by virtue of the fact that they are not state parties. I could probably add a thing or two, which is just to highlight that these are not the only two ways in which we can have jurisdiction, exercise jurisdiction, because there is also the possibility of a referral by the UN Security Council, acting under Chapter 7 of the UN Charter, can actually ask the ICC to investigate in a situation that is a non-state party to the ICC. There is also the possibility, I've not seen, that has not happened. I don't know whether this is likely to happen, that is the UN referral. But there is also the other possibility of Syria making a declaration accepting the jurisdiction of the ICC, Article 12.3. In that case also, potentially we could have jurisdiction to look into this case, but it's highly unlikely that this will happen. So again, it just comes down to jurisdiction. When can we exercise jurisdiction and when can we not exercise jurisdiction by virtue of applying the legal criteria, the legal requirements under the Rome Statute has to be met.
You have argued the idea of intent being important in terms of non-military objectives. Can you explain a little bit about the case of Mali?
Well, with respect to the situation in Mali, even if you look at the way it unfolded, the fact that Mr. Al-Mahdi has pleaded guilty to the crimes and was convicted by the court and sentenced by the court. Really, the responsibility to insist so much on the intent was probably not as important as it would have been if he pleaded not guilty and then we had to prove the case. Of course, even though he's pleaded guilty, we did bring all the evidence that we had before the judges to show them why in the first instance we are charging him, to show them that both the mens rea, which is the intent, and the actus reus have met. The fact that he was part of committing the crimes. So we've shown that, and what we've tried to do in showing the intent is we have shown to the court the fact that not only Al-Mahdi was present in most of the sites where the destructions were taking place, but we were also able to show that he personally took part in at least 5 of them, where he was personally engaged in the destruction of these historic monuments. And again, to show intent, we have shown that in each of these sites, he was the one who was announcing the reasons why he thought that the building should be destroyed. He was there taking part, and he was the one providing justifications why they were doing this and why it was necessary to do that. So with respect to the intent that he wanted this building destroyed, I think what we have shown to the court has amply demonstrated that he had every intention, together with the team that he was with, and also as head of the Hisbah, to ensure that this historic monuments and buildings were destroyed. But it was important to show that he intended and he followed that intention with the act.
Mr. Al-Mahdi was the first defendant to accept his responsibilities for his actions in front of the ICC. What does his trial and sentence mean for future cases of the ICC?
This is the first time that anyone has pleaded guilty before the ICC. And I think this is significant, that we have someone who has come before the court, and he was, the charges that were brought against him were read to him, and he stood and said that I am guilty of these crimes, I've committed it, I regret that I have committed this crime, and I ask for forgiveness, he said, but I'm also directed, of course, to the community, that I think this was also very significant, and that he's calling on other people who have the mind to be engaged in this kind of conduct not to do so. He's encouraging them not to do so, and then he showed remorse. This is very significant that Al-Mahdi has done this. In the first instance, it has enabled us to reduce the time of trial as much as possible, because trial is resources. It takes a lot of resources to bring in the witnesses, and it takes time. So it has helped the court to reduce the time in which this trial was to take place. It has also helped the court in terms of the resources that it would have spent in this trial. And all that, I believe, was taken into consideration by the judges when they were giving the sentence, which also, coming back to intent, I think intent played a great role in the sentencing by the judges. So this is important for the court going forward. And it also, I believe, demonstrates to other people, those who are charged before the court. It also demonstrates that there is always fairness and equity. If they decided not to waste the time of the court and to be able to plead to the charges that have been brought against them, it really demonstrates that they will be treated fairly and that the court will take these issues into consideration. Of course, I'm not calling on people to come and plead guilty before the ICC, but it's just to demonstrate how fair the process is. And with respect to the other cases before the ICC, each case comes on its own. You know, we have to take each case on a case-by-case basis. And so far, the cases that we are handling here, as you have seen, it's not a guilty plea, and then we have the obligation to, of course, as prosecutor, present our case and to prove our case going forward. But again, it was a significant thing that happened in the Al-Mahdi case, and it has demonstrated the judges of the ICC who tried this case. It has demonstrated that they are also fair, and they also take into consideration everything, and will always come to the right decision in terms of whether the plea was a guilty plea or not.
You have mentioned that Mr. Al-Mahdi pleaded guilty and regretted his actions. Do you think that is important in terms of mobilization on the ground?
I believe so. I believe that it's really a form of deterrence for would-be perpetrators of such crimes. As I said, when he appeared before the judges, he did show remorse. And not only that, he asked for forgiveness, that this is a terrible thing that I have done. I think I should not have done it, expressing regret for committing the act. And then what is more important was saying, those who are out there, you know, who have their minds set to committing these kind of crimes, I would like to discourage you in committing these crimes, that you should not do this as I have done. I don't think this will just fall on deaf ears. I think especially given the fact that, yes, he has pleaded and everything, but he's held accountable for the crimes. He's held accountable, and that justice is done, and that it does not go with impunity. These are the messages which I think any potential perpetrator, those who, of course, within the jurisdiction of the ICC, who are contemplating of committing these crimes, will think twice that this is also a result that can happen to me if I commit these crimes. I think it's a form of deterrence as well. It's a form of deterrence.
Mali is a state party, and through a self-referral, it made this case possible. Do you think that other states are likely to follow suit in similar cases?
One thing that I probably did not explain is with respect to the powers of the prosecutor to have of proprio motu, using own powers under the statute to start cases. This is just to explain that if crimes happen on the territory of a state party. Unlike Mali, they decide not to refer the situation to the ICC. Under the Rome Statute, the prosecutor has the powers to be able to start a case proprio motu on his own motion, on my own motion as prosecutor. I can start a case, even if there is no referral. Of course, we have to go through the process of maybe conducting a preliminary examination and making sure that ICC crimes have been committed, that the crimes are grave enough to warrant the intervention of the ICC, because these are the criteria we use going from preliminary examinations to investigations. So that the crimes have been committed, subject matter crimes of the ICC have been committed. They are grave enough to warrant the intervention of the ICC. There is no complementarity, that no other state, in this case the state where the crimes are being committed, or a state that would normally have jurisdiction, is not trying the case. This is really the issue of admissibility, complementarity, and that whether it is not against the interest of justice to intervene in that situation. So in a case, you're giving me a scenario whether you think that other states will follow suit. I believe that with respect to states that are parties to the Rome Statute, of course they always have that possibility to refer the situation to the ICC, provided that they are unable and unwilling to do so themselves, or they cannot do so themselves. They can refer the situation to the ICC. Where also as a state party, they do not refer the situation to the ICC, there are other ways in which the case can get to the ICC. I talked to you earlier on about a referral from the UN Security Council, which we already have in 2 situations, Libya and Darfur, Sudan. Or I also mentioned to you the issue of declaration, Article 12.3 declaration, in which the state, a non-state party can refer the situation to the ICC. But in the case of a state party, really, the state has the possibility and the responsibility to investigate and prosecute by themselves. And if they do not, ICC prosecutor has the authority to be able to start investigations. In non-state parties, on the other hand, you have the UN Security Council referral, you also have the Article 12.3 declaration. And all of these are really just to ensure that there is not impunity, no impunity for these kind of crimes. So even where the ICC does not have the jurisdiction, ordinarily, there are possibilities to still bring the case before the ICC through these other methods that I have said to you. But I guess everything will be taken on case-by-case basis. It depends on what are the circumstances. And again, it's all a matter of jurisdiction and how we are able to intervene. But I think that the issue of the importance of these atrocity crimes is already there. That we know there is ample demonstration already. I mentioned UNESCO, trying to also educate everybody with respect to educate humanity with respect to this responsibility of not destroying this heritage. But also there is the criminal jurisdiction of the ICC, which can also be used to try these cases. But I also hope that national and domestic jurisdiction will also exercise this important aspect of preserving, that is accountability, preserving these important buildings. They also do have that primary responsibility to investigate and prosecute, and I hope they will also take that possibility into account.
You've talked about no impunity, responsibility and accountability. Are there other current conflicts where cultural heritage is under threat?
You know, the unfortunate thing is that in modern conflicts, this is increasingly becoming the order of the day. It is unfortunate. And we see that increasingly cultural heritage is at peril. This is just the hard reality. I have mentioned what has happened in Palmyra. I mean, years of heritage and the destruction, the wanton destruction that has taken place. I talked about Mosul in Iraq. This is also very, very unfortunate that it has taken place. So what we really see is, especially with all these misguided ideologies that people have about heritage, unfortunately we see it more and more happening. We see that it is under threat, and it is continuing to happen. And this is where I think that those who are committing or likely to commit these kind of atrocity crimes must always have that message. The message that this will be done, but this is done, but also at your own peril, in the sense that you will be held accountable. The message that these are war crimes. These are serious crimes under the Rome Statute, or even maybe under national domestic jurisdiction. These are serious crimes. We have to continue to send that message. And where we can and have possibility to take action, so that we can also send a strong message that this is what will happen if you engage in this kind of conduct. And in my office, this is what we are trying to do. We will, wherever we have jurisdiction and these crimes occur, we will indeed investigate and prosecute it. In fact, we are even going further, because I believe it is important to, in a very structured way, show how the office is dealing with the destruction of cultural heritage and property. And as we speak, I have already given instructions that we'll have a policy paper, public policy paper, on how we will investigate these crimes, how we will prosecute these crimes, how we are ready to also, where we can, assist domestic jurisdiction if they want to. Already, I think having a policy paper is something that can be used at the national level. And just to say, be very, very clear, unambiguous, that this is a crime that is under the Rome Statute in the first instance, so it is a legal mandate. But this is a crime also that will lend very high significance to, and which we will, in any event, investigate and prosecute. I think this is the message that has to be sent. And it should not only come from my office, because I know that there are many who understand and appreciate the importance of preserving our cultural heritage, and also making sure that those who are attempting to destroy it will know there will be consequences for that.
The El Mahdi case focused only on cultural heritage. Why is that?
For several reasons. But maybe the first reason that I will come back to, I've already discussed it, is about the importance. First, it is in the Rome Statute. It is a war crime under the Rome Statute, which I have duty, responsibility, and obligation to investigate and prosecute. So it is there when it comes to subject matter jurisdiction, and the fact that Article 8 has actually described it as a war crime. So I have the legal basis to move. But also, secondly, of this, the fact that I found it absolutely important for people to know, especially those who are perpetrating these crimes, or those who are thinking of perpetrating these crimes, to know that it is a crime and that it is punishable under the Rome Statute. And where we have jurisdiction, we will go for it. I also wanted to make that message loud and clear. Also, I know that even when it comes to Mali, they found it very, very significant that it is a matter that cannot just be left alone like that. Mali did not have the capacity to investigate and prosecute the crimes that were taking place, including this Article 8 crimes. But they found it very, very important that this matter should be referred to the ICC. Mali is a state party under the Rome Statute. It has ratified the Rome Statute, and we have jurisdiction, territorial jurisdiction in Mali. And they know that if they are not in a position to try this case, they are part of an institution that can do it, which has informed them to come and refer the situation to the ICC prosecutor. I remember receiving that referral maybe 2 months after I was elected as prosecutor of the ICC. And in the referral, this was particularly mentioned. So you can see for Mali also that this was crucially important, that a whole community was affected, a whole country was affected, and as we continue to investigate, a whole region was affected. We have had several countries that are near Mali who lamented the destruction of these important buildings, who said that this is not only a heritage for Mali, but also for us, you know, as part of the region, for us as part of the being from Africa, for everybody, for humanity as in the world, that this kind of crime has been committed on such very important buildings. So these were the reasons that were really informing me, that were really incentivizing me, apart from the responsibility I have, the legal mandate, that said that I have to send a message, a clear message, a strong message to show that this is a very serious issue that is happening here. And it is not only serious for my office, but it is actually serious for humanity, that Timbuktu mausoleums are being destroyed. This is mainly the reason why of course, I continue to investigate in Mali, and this is significant. I continue to investigate in Mali, and I'm investigating other crimes. But I also saw that there was an opportunity in the fact that we were quickly able to investigate and get the evidence that we need to bring it before the judges. This is why, whilst my investigations continue, this was something that I could easily also bring before the judges and prove it, and be able to see results, and be able to send message and send a signal that this is a serious crime that will be investigated and prosecuted by my office.
Thank you so much, Prosecutor Bensouda. We have now interesting answers and important insights into the case, the El Mahdi case, the destruction of cultural heritage in Mali, which will probably set precedents for the prosecution of similar cases in the future. We thank you all for watching.